everyone. You are listening to She Leads with Carly. I am your host, Carly Molatsky, and my guest today is Xiaodi Zhang. Xiaodi is the Chief Product Officer at FirstDibs.com, the world's leading marketplace for extraordinary design. And Xiaodi has been in product roles for the last 20 years, starting off as a product manager in the financial services space at NextCard and Digital Insights, to then working at eBay, where she went from PM to director, and then senior director of product at GILT, to then where she is today as a C-suite executive in product at First Dibs. So Xiaodi, first of all, I am so excited to have you on the show. Thank you so much for joining. How are you doing today?
Great. Well, thank you, Carly, for inviting me. Excited to have this conversation.
Yes, of course. So first, set the scene. Where are you in the world? Are you working from home? Are you back in the office? What's going on?
Working from home, like most tech employees out there, and I am dialing in from Brooklyn.
Amazing. Okay, so I want to go, as I do with most of my episodes, I want to take you back to when you graduated from Southern Methodist University. You got a bachelor's and a master's in economics. So at this point, I want to know, how did you break into product? What was that looking like? I know you're a first generation immigrant. Tell me about these challenges that you faced and how you approach this, starting your career post college.
Yeah. So, oh my gosh. Well, I was in Dallas at the time and I didn't know much about product management or project management for that matter. And both of those disciplines were relatively new and it has sort of found me. So I applied for a job at Capital One, which had created a management program around project management. And they were looking for individuals who had a lot of experience leading organizations. And so I actually did that at school through a lot of extracurricular activities and student leadership organizations, leading like a women's symposium, and then also even starting the first ever Asian American magazine in Texas.
Wow, amazing. So take me through that process, because I know right now in product, I see often two different heads. One, there's, these right out of college APM programs, and then on the other side, it's years of product experience. So take me through that first job you got with Capital One as a project manager. How was that? How did that process look like? I know you mentioned that, even recruiters struggle to pronounce your name when we did our prep call. So how did you really approach this? What got your foot in the door?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, I mean, initially, I guess in terms of getting my foot through the door, it's that number one is they saw this potential given that I had led so many different organizations and projects on my own and in college. And so this is something that, it's funny thinking back about this because my dad and I, we used to have all of these arguments because I did spend a lot of my time working and then also leading student organizations. But to me, it was something that I was passionate about. For instance, like the Asian American magazine, it was a great opportunity that I seized and created while I was at SMU. And in fact, that was one of the key reasons Capital One gave me this chance and opportunity, because they saw this potential in me because I was taking on this opportunity sort of above and beyond, and then also just creating this thing from scratch in Texas, no less. So they took that chance on me. Of course, I had strong academic background and rigor, but I think what really helped them feel confident about my abilities as a fresh grad to be leading really complex projects within financial services industry that's heavily regulated, and leading teams over close to 100 people across many different locations. And they felt confident because I was doing it sort of on my own in college.
Wow. So it just shows that it does help in college, even though, right now there's not very, product focused degrees and things like that. But at the end of the day, it does help to do your own projects or start your own thing. Like that can contribute to, being successful in product, which is great. And it's great to know that as
100%.
amazing. So how did you start off as a project manager? How does that differ than product management?
Yeah, so I mean, I think it really depends on the industry and depends on the company. For me at Capital One, I was leading projects in terms of, I was responsible for timelines, ensuring um, various teams were coordinated and made sure that milestones were being met and our timelines were being met and initiatives were executed and implemented. So, in some ways, it gave me a great opportunity to pick up on important skills like project management, communication, stakeholder management. However, I felt I was missing the really essential skills of developing a solution and then coming up with the right type of solution and also determining what to prioritize.
Mm.
So as a project manager, I didn't have a seat at the table to determine whether or not what we were working on made sense. If that clarifies. So basically I was responsible for making sure things were able to get done and get done on time, and our all of our milestones were met, but I wasn't part of the team that determined whether or not
Mm.
we should work on that project.
Amazing. And so after that, how did this product management, and if correct me if I'm wrong, but this was your first role as a product manager at NextCard, correct?
Correct.
So
It
how
was
did yeah, so how did this
for
happen?
next card as well.
Oh,
So
I
yeah,
see.
I think basically within a year, I realized I wasn't able to learn as much as I wanted while I was at Capital One, and it would take me a long time. So I really wanted to be at a fast paced environment and learning as much as I wanted to be part of the team that determined what to work on and how to prioritize. And so I learned about product management, but more importantly, I was trying to get to Silicon Valley and San Francisco. Just this back in 2000, and there's so much happening. I really wanted to ride that kind of train and just be able to be a part of that rocket ship. So luckily, I saw this opportunity at NextCard, the first online credit card issuer. And even though I didn't have any technical background experience, I, you know, very much like pursued that opportunity just and was trying to leverage my experience at Capital One, which is a financial services company, to get my foot in the door.
Yeah. Okay. So I want to hold on to that little bit that you mentioned how you didn't have technical experience. And nowadays, a lot of people say, being a great product manager, it definitely helps having that technical background. You're talking to engineers, you have to know their language, things like that. How did you approach that? Was that something that you knew you were lacking? Did it weigh on you? How did you approach that given your lack of experience?
No, 100%. I mean, I remember my first day, I was given this job of walking over to the QA department and talk to our QA engineer about a site issue. And it was, there were a number of words in that sentence that I didn't even understand, to be perfectly honest, right? So I had to quickly, I think a couple of things. One is just recognize what I didn't know and be pretty upfront about it. And then spending time with the best technical people, experts within the company, and just learn and sit with them, shadow them, talk to them, have conversations to try to get up to speed as quickly as I can.
Wow, I love that. Because, first of all, I think many people try, they don't come across as not knowing, or they hide the fact that they don't know. But it seems like what you did is you actually embraced it. You wrote down your gaps, or you knew what you didn't know, and you really implemented that and found the best people to help you. Was that
Mhm.
hard to do? Like, were they willing to help? Because I know now, like, what is your advice for people who that struggle to admit that they don't know, or they want to prove that they're smart enough to be in the room?
Yeah, I think it is. It's very intimidating. It's very difficult. However, I always feel that, you know, anything that we're working on, it's not rocket science. And even if it is rocket science, like
Yeah.
it's something that somebody has mastered, right? So to me, it's always being humble enough to know what you don't know. However, be confident enough that you can learn it as long as you put in the work and perseverance, right? So I'm a big believer in working hard, but also having the self confidence that you can master something that even though you don't have a degree, you didn't go to school to learn that specific skill set. And I think it is part of it is just developing relationships and developing trust with some of the most technical people in the organization. And one of the things that I do with my PMs who join the company is, in for their onboarding prep, they have to spend time with our senior architects, and they have to spend time with, if it's, data architecture related, they have to spend time with our data warehouse designer and architects as well. So you have to start from the basics and the foundation, and it's so important to build those relationships very early on.
Yeah. Okay. So I really want to go to this story that you told me, and I'd love my listeners to hear it from you. But tell me the story when your boss invited you to this meeting with VPs, and it was intimidating. How was that meeting? How did you act, and how did your boss respond?
Sure. Yeah, this was so after NextCard, I joined this company
Hmm.
called Digital Insight. It's a sort of developed a software for banks and credit unions, and I was hired to lead a suite of products. And I think it was like month two or something. My boss invited me to this meeting to align on our roadmap with our senior leadership. So including directors, VPs, people with 2 decades of experience or more. And then me, I'm like 24, 25.
Yeah.
And I felt it was really important for me to take notes, to listen, to absorb, to kind of like learn through osmosis, right? And then so I didn't say anything, didn't participate, but I was, took a lot of notes. And then afterwards, on our way back to my chair, to our cubicles, my boss pulled me aside and he said, Xiaodi, if you're not going to say anything, don't even show up.
Wow.
Don't even come to these meetings. And it was such an amazing lesson for me to understand that there are expectations. As a product manager, I should be there to represent my product, to ask important questions, and to participate. I'm not there to take notes. That's not my job, right? And anyway, so it's one of the lessons that I think about a lot, even as a CPO, and hopefully something that I part on my team.
Yeah. I love that story. I think it resonates at least with me for sure, but I think so many people also going into a new role, a new company, you feel, you're learning, but at the end of the day, you're invited to that meeting. You deserve a seat at that table. And how is that also translated to being a minority Asian American woman in the room, often being the only woman? How have you also implemented that, that one lesson to now your everyday?
Yeah, I think it's gosh, it's a tough subject because as an Asian American woman, I think one of the reasons why I didn't speak up, in that meeting, 15 years ago, is because coming from my culture and my background and learning, that I need to be respectful of elders. I need to listen, and that is something that I have to sort of work against. And especially as a senior member of a company, I need to make sure that my voice is heard. And sometimes even it's uncomfortable to me, but I need to kind of constantly work against that. And it is something that I definitely want to encourage my team to do the same. It's
Yeah.
so important for young women, especially young women, to speak up.
Yeah, definitely. And it also helps when there are others in your same position or at least understanding because you feel you're lifting each other up and you're hearing each other. So it also contributes to it. Um,
Absolutely.
so take me now to eBay. You got an opportunity at eBay. And
Mhm.
even first, beyond, going deeply into product at eBay, I want to know, how did you approach this opportunity? You have a company, you have an offer. Are you more attracted to the company? Or do you like how big of a role does the passion for the product play? versus I want to be a product manager. This is a great opportunity.
Yeah, passion for a product and a company always helps. It's always something to be mindful of and to care about. At the same time, I do think earlier on especially, well, for me at least in my career, I just optimize and focus on learning. What type of company will allow me to learn and will give me all the best resources to be able to maximize my learning. And that's something that I think it's important to keep in mind. For instance, starting out, I wasn't passionate about financial services per se, but I was able to get this job at Capital One first, and then leveraging my experience was able to transition to product at NextCard because of that background experience, right? And then ultimately, of course, like I definitely wanted to join a top tech company like eBay or PayPal, and I had actually applied to PayPal initially because I was sort of thinking that I could leverage sort of my experience in fintech to get into PayPal. However, I was rejected, but it didn't stop me. I still applied to eBay, and I luckily was hired to be a product manager. And that was one of the best decisions I made. And at the time, I did have other offers, but I ultimately chose eBay because number one, at the time, eBay was the top tech company in Silicon Valley, and it attracted so much amazing talent that I knew that I could learn from everyone there. And that was the primary reason I chose eBay.
Yeah. Okay. And it's very interesting because, as you said, passion obviously helps, but at the end of the day, being surrounded by incredible people who you can learn from, and then from there, you're ultimately going to become a better product manager. So I really like that. Um, so now tell me, you were at eBay for 6 years,
Mhm.
obviously going from PM product manager to eventually the director of product. How did that transition look from a purely product perspective? How did your brain change a bit each role that you had?
Great question. So I joined, I think one of the decisions that I made about eBay was that, again, number one is I looked at it as an opportunity to help me learn. And then, in order to help me learn, I chose this role that was basically owner of my eBay, individual contributor, even though actually before eBay, I had managed teams and I sort of, on the surface, and when I was considering other opportunities that were people managers, I sort of decided to optimize for learning and to become an individual contributor again at eBay. So for the first couple of years, it was really just learning the role and responsibilities of managing and leading product at such a large company like eBay, and
Yeah.
which is very different than building something at an earlier stage company. You are sort of a steward of a product. You have to learn how to optimize. You have to learn how this fits into the global kind of platform of eBay. So I really was learning the first year, honestly, just how eBay worked and then how I fit in. And then I actually chose, I raised my hand to go to China. eBay had acquired a local company that had 85% market share. I wanted to really contribute. And given my background as a Chinese immigrant, I felt like I could help the company and also learn again from this new experience, new challenge.
Yeah.
So that kind of set me up for the second part of my journey at eBay.
Wow, amazing. I also really like how you mentioned it took a year to really learn the product. And I think a lot of people they join, they go through their onboarding and they're expected to, go right into it and know how the product works and know everything. But I think, it does take a process and you continue learning through each project. So I really, yeah, I that resonates with
Yeah.
me.
Well, I will say that my boss, my second week I was on my job, I had to do a new hire training presentation on my product. So I had to train a lot of other people.
Wow.
I mean, you want to be in a position where you don't take too long, right,
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
learn. You learn superficially, but then over time you have to learn, okay, how does it actually
Right.
drive impact on the company?
Right. So, through this transition from product to now managing other product managers, developing this higher training program, how did you ever have this, imposter syndrome that we all hear about? Was it a hard transition going from, being deep into the product task versus now I have to worry about everyone else?
Of course, yeah. So the third part of my journey at eBay, I built out a team and started to hire product managers in China and designers as well. And it was very hard to have to let go and to kind of build out systems and designing process to ensure that other product managers were successful. And it was particularly challenging in China because product was even less mature
Right.
as a discipline in China, and so developing people also not in a different language can be very challenging, as you can imagine. So definitely very, very challenging. And it's still, I think it's the most challenging, but the most rewarding job you can have.
Yeah. Yeah. What advice do you have for people who do have, in a product role, but they do have this objective and this goal to be senior and then director and then hopefully chief product officer like yourself? Was it very intentional for you? Did you look down the road 5 years from now, you wanted to be a CPO, or how did you approach that? Or it kind of just happened?
Um, that's a great question. I mean, I think earlier on in my career, I had like I always saw myself, always wanted to be in a position where I can have an impact
Yeah.
and an impact on a company. And then one of the other things that I was very intentional about was just to be able to work in China and to learn about how tech is evolving and how the country is evolving. And so I was able to do both. Like it, in terms of CPO, was not necessarily intentional outside of the fact that I wanted to be in a position where I could have an outsized impact on the company and its trajectory. And I just realized, for instance, in my experience in China, I didn't have a seat at the table. And it was very frustrating that I couldn't shape the direction of the company just as an individual contributor. And even as a manager, there's still a lot that you can't control or have influence over. So
Right.
it's, I think for a lot of type A product managers, ultimately they want to be either founder or CPO because, that's when you can actually change the course of a company.
Yeah. So tell me now, you reached a point where you were able to be CPO, Chief Product Officer at First Dibs. How did
Mhm.
you look at this opportunity? And I really want to know what your day-to-day looks like as a CPO.
Sure, sure. Yeah, no, I mean, I think going back to what I just mentioned, I had always sort of seen myself in a position where I can have, truly an impact on the company. And then also I love creating. So First Dibs, 10 years ago when I joined, the website took 15 seconds to load and there were all sorts of challenges, and I felt like, gosh, I could have a meaningful impact on this company.
Oh, wow.
And I decided to take a pretty significant risk to join First Dibs. But I knew that I would be part of this sort of founding team of First Dibs 2.0. And it was really, really motivating for me to be in that position, and very exciting time for me to come in and to be the first product hire, to build a team, to build a business, and really scale it over 10 years.
Wow. And I actually heard in another podcast, or I actually recommend this. You did an interview or presentation about being a CPO and being very intentional with your career. It's on
Mm,
Vimeo. I recommend it. But I did hear that when you were approaching this role, it wasn't very much, they were hiring you, you also did your own due diligence and asked the founder for references. Take me through that and that approach, because it's not very conventional.
Yeah, no, this is so important. I think for everyone who is going through a search right now or thinking about it, it's absolutely important that you interview the team and that you interview the company and really think through, because it should be a deliberate decision, and there's an opportunity cost, right? As the more senior you are, the opportunity cost honestly increases. So the tables turn a little bit. Of course, you want to get the job and do well in the interview process, but it's just as important for you to know, I think more than anything else, who will you be reporting to,
Yep.
and what are they like as managers, and what kind of CEO will he or she be when things get tough, right? And do you see yourself learning from this person? So that's really important part of the process.
Yeah. Wow. I love that. I think it's very important. And oftentimes we really only think it's one way. We're just, proving ourselves, and once we get it, then it's great. So I think it flips it on its head, which is important to consider for sure.
Yeah.
So tell me, before we wrap up, first of all, I'm loving this and I could go on for another 30 minutes, but what is your biggest challenge as a CPO, you would say?
Oh gosh. As a CPO, I think, just building team and scaling an organization is, I think for any C-level leader, that's got to be probably your most challenging task, is how do you scale yourself? You're no longer able to manage every project yourself, and how do you create systems and process to ensure your teams can scale and have repeated success? That is the key.
Yeah. Okay. Amazing. And okay, Xiaodi, for last few questions, what is your favorite product? I have to ask, and why? And it can't be First Dibs.
Right. No, of course. Yeah. I mean, it changes, every so often, but honestly, one of my favorite ones these days is TikTok. I just feel like they really have created a surprise and delight type of experience, and so immersive as well, where I could spend an hour just going down some rabbit hole,
Yep.
of dog videos. And it's, there are a lot of other companies that have tried to do this and still continue to do it, but the way that they've designed their experience, I think truly is top of their game, and
Yeah.
something that I think we can all learn from as product managers.
Wow. Yeah, okay, so given that answer, I have to ask, so TikTok is part of this, social networking space, and obviously there are pros like you said, and there are also negatives that can happen, and negative impacts of whatever it may be. But I want to know, when you're thinking of a product and new features, how
Mhm.
much do you weigh the positive impact versus the
Mhm.
potential negative outcomes that may result from it? How does that come into it?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think a couple of things to keep in mind is, one is, you don't really know
Right.
how a product will be used by your customers, right? So, I mean, you can do a lot of research in advance and try to anticipate every use case, but at the end of the day, you really don't know. So, I honestly just encourage product managers in that position to, um, to launch, and then you can do it in a smaller sort of, like, if you really do worry about the potential risk, you can launch it in a controlled environment and get some quick feedback, and
Right.
then plan and work on those edge cases. But sometimes we can talk ourselves out of innovation, and it's just, important to also just be humble enough to know that you won't know
Right.
how it's going to live in the wild, right? So just set aside time, though, to make sure that you can respond. I think honestly is the best advice I could give.
Yeah, and it's even going into it, launching a product, launching a feature, it's recognizing that it could have adverse effects, but giving yourself that time to iterate and recoup and go through that. That's what's important, is what you're saying. So yes, I really like that. So, okay, Xiaodi, what is a secret talent that you may have?
Oh my gosh. I don't know. Secret, but I love gardening, and it's sort of my COVID thing that both my husband and I have gotten into. That's probably not something that people, my friends from, especially from my days in Shanghai, would expect me to develop. I'm such a city girl, but I love being outside and gardening. I was just doing that yesterday.
Amazing. Amazing. I love that. And for your last and final question, I would love to know, is there a book that you recommend, especially for product managers, for aspiring product managers, that has really helped you?
Yeah, and it's not necessarily product specific, but I love The Outliers.
Ah, yeah.
And there's a specific story in that book. It was about Korean Airlines and how, Korean Airlines experienced so many crashes at a particular point in its history. And they realized that it was due to miscommunication from the pilots to the senior pilots. And it was based on kind of cultural issues from communication that anyway. So it also helped reinforce that as an Asian American woman, I need to step out of my comfort zone sometimes, because as a product leader and as a leader of a company, I need to be able to speak to my CEO or the board and be able to share potentially contrarian points of view or difficult truths that we need to recognize. And it's just, it's a great book. And there are a lot of other similarly, interesting and insightful stories, but that one in particular has always been a great reminder for me.
Yeah. Okay. Incredible. Amazing. First, thank you so much for coming on the show. I learned so much. I'm so excited for my listeners to learn from you. So really, thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you, Carly.